The Compliance Life details the journey to and in the role of a Chief Compliance Officer. How does one come to sit in the CCO chair? What are some of the skills a CCO needs to successfully navigate the compliance waters in any company? What are some of the top challenges CCOs have faced, and how did they meet them? These questions and many others will be explored in this new podcast series. The Compliance Life is hosted by Tom Fox, and each month he'll present the story of one CCO through 4 episodes. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network.
This month, my guest on The Compliance Life is Gabe Hidalgo. Gabe is a native New Yorker, and that in many ways has influenced his professional career, leading to his sitting in the CCO chair. He is a first-generation American, went to law school. His early professional life was working as in-house counsel at an insurance company and in insurance defense. After 9/11, he moved into anti-money laundering, focusing on that part of the 9/11 story that he felt he could impact. He worked in a variety of financial institutions and the Federal Reserve Bank of New York. Gabe has sat in the CCO chair in 2 separate banks, and he talks about that. And then he now works at K2 Integrity, using his CCO experience to help clients create and implement best practices compliance programs. It's a little bit different journey than several of the CCOs we've talked to, but it's fascinating nonetheless. I know you will enjoy this month on The Compliance Life, featuring Gabe Hidalgo. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. Hello, everyone. Welcome to this month's series of episodes on The Compliance Life. Today, we have episode 1 with Gabe Hidalgo. Gabe, first of all, thank you for taking the time to visit with me for this series.
Thank you so much for having me on, Tom.
Gabe, I wanted to start with your academic and early professional career. What did you want to be when you grew up, and your early professional life?
Sure. So I was born and raised in New York City. My parents came from Ecuador. So I was first generation American. I attended Brooklyn Tech High School, and in my high school we had majors. So my major was aeronautical engineering. And I think initially in the early stages of my life, I actually wanted to be an Air Force pilot. And I thought understanding the engineering aspect of aeronautics would help me in that regard. I think that was a little bit driven by the movie Top Gun had come out, so everybody wanted to be Tom Cruise at that point. Anyway, when I went to college, I basically started to figure out that I wanted to study political science. It was something that for me was super intriguing, but I also wanted something that would kind of sharpen my reasoning skills. And so I pursued a concentration in logic, which helped tremendously in building arguments and having successful debates and things like that. And actually, in speaking of debate, I also joined the debate team at my school at Marist College, which was fantastic. I enjoyed it a great ton. I had great teammates. Everybody was great. I learned a lot, and it actually helped with my rhetorical skills. So initially, when I first arrived at college, I had an idea that I wanted to be a lawyer, a practicing lawyer. So I felt poli-sci plus logic plus the debate team kind of get me prepared for that. 4 years later, I graduated, and then I attended law school. I went to the University of Dayton Law School. They provided me with a scholarship, and as I always tell everyone, you don't turn down free money. So I headed out to Dayton, Ohio for the first probably out of New York State experience as a student for me, and the only one. I went there, studied, I loved it. I think law school's great preparation for a lot of things. It's the way of, they kind of help you formulate your thoughts better. They help you to organize the way that you want to debate something or argue something, or even structure something in a document or public speaking wise. I loved my law school experience. I graduated after 3 years, then came back to New York. Basically had to teach myself New York law to prepare for the New York bar. Thank you to Barbary, by the way, the bar preparation service. And then I passed the bar on my first shot and began working as an in-house attorney for an insurance company. I did that for the first few years of my legal career, and then switched to being outside counsel for an insurance company. Those 6 years, I learned a lot. I learned that I didn't want to be a practicing attorney. I didn't enjoy the kind of the grind of being in the law itself. I did have some fun with trials. I think I loved that aspect of it. I just didn't. I didn't enjoy the insurance defense part of it. And it's a great profession. I think if you're a talented attorney, it's something that you can go into. But it just wasn't my cup of tea. But that's basically like the beginning of how I started. But it was basically a journey from understanding that I wasn't going to be an Air Force pilot to deciding that my freshman year in college that I was going to go to law school, doing all the things necessary throughout my college career to get me ready for taking the LSATs to prepare myself to go to law school, filling out a ton of law school applications, getting back those acceptances, and then figuring out what the best deal law school-wise was, and then selecting a law school, having those 3 years of just study, understanding, meeting people from different parts of the country, and then, basically coming back to New York and getting ready for the bar exam, which by far is probably the hardest experience I've ever had in my life. If you've never taken the New York State bar exam, it's a experience. I'll say that. I was in the middle of the Jacob Javits Center, surrounded by thousands of fellow candidates, and we were all wondering the same thing: will we pass this exam? But I was very fortunate. I worked really hard, and I was able to pass it on the first shot. So yeah, that's my career background, my early professional career, at least the first 6 years of my career.
Gabe, were you the first person in your family to go to college?
I was the first person in the United States to go to college, and that's really because I was the oldest. My brother, 2 years younger, he followed in my footsteps. He attended Boston University. He got his degree in international relations, and then followed that up with a MBA from Stern, from NYU. So we were the only 2 kids in our family. Our parents, at the very beginning, always put education at the top. We knew it was the great equalizer. Being young Hispanic kids, we knew that our path was really through education, and then pursuing our goals in the professional field. But without an education, we would not be able to achieve the things that we've been able to achieve. But yeah, I was the first one, but in reality, that's really because I was the oldest one. But then my brother followed in my footsteps and proceeded to not only graduate college, but also attend and graduate NYU to get his MBA.
I was interested in your remarks on the bar examination because for me, it was about 10 paces further, and I still characterize it as one of the worst experiences of my life. First of all, I did not attend the barbering course that I paid for. So I spent the week before the bar exam, cramming as best I could, and then took the exam and walked out completely convinced I had failed the bar exam. But I passed. But I never left the state of Texas after that because I never wanted to take another bar exam, which you used to have to do if you moved to another state. So I was definitely shell-shocked from that experience. Your early professional career, both as an in-house attorney and in outside counsel, I, in a prior life, was a trial lawyer, and I did a lot of insurance defense and coverage work. Did you do either coverage work or other type of work when you were an in-house lawyer?
I did coverage work, and I also did defense. So, for example, the insurance company that I was working for at the time, they had personal injury. I shouldn't say personal injury. They had automobile insurance policies that they had issued. And whenever someone was injured within that automobile, we were tasked with defending the insured from any claims. In addition to that, there was also homeowner insurance claims that we were tasked with defending. And then we also had a commercial side where we defended, for example, slip and fall on the premises of an insured on a commercial property, where, for example, there was a debate as to whether or not the insured slipped on the city-owned side of the sidewalk or on the insured's covered a portion of the walkway. And so 6 years of that, whether it was in-house or outside counsel, kind of, it wasn't my cup of tea. I felt like I wasn't fighting for the little person. I was defending a big insurance company from having to pay out whatever it is that they were trying to avoid. And so honestly, for me, it was really just a means to support my family. I had just gotten married right after I passed the bar. And then my daughter was born about 2.5 years after I passed the bar. So at that point in my life, my priorities were making sure that I put food on the table for my family. Both my wife and I worked, so we were equal partners, and I wanted to make sure that whatever I brought in was, an equitable share, and also supporting my family. Obviously, health insurance is key, especially at a young point, especially with a newborn and newly married. So I wanted to make sure that our whole family was covered. The kids and my wife and I were covered with health insurance. And so it was a means to an end. And I did that for about 6 years.
Gabe, I think everyone who does insurance defense work at some point comes to the conclusion that you did, that perhaps there's a little bit more to being a lawyer than either defending insurance companies or trying to avoid coverage. But my experience in the coverage work was that it taught me a level of rigor in, I didn't draft policies, but I had to read them and interpret them. And I really learned a lot about the drafting of language and how that language applied based upon the facts of each case. Did you feel like you got some education out of doing just the straight coverage work?
Yeah, I think the coverage work, you really needed to be precise with language. And I think when you look at the way these policies are drafted, and when we would argue, especially in co-insurance applications, or in the debate of who's covering what, a misplaced and, a misplaced comma, a misplaced phrase, a preposition, all these things would open up the opportunity to create lines of argument where there should not have been had the document been properly drafted. There were, I think, opportunities there for me to kind of hone my interpretive skills when I'm reading documents, which I think has carried over to my compliance career. For me, I think the coverage part was more enjoyable than the straight up insurance part. That I did not enjoy as much. I actually ended up a lot of times feeling bad for the plaintiffs that we were defending against, because I could see that they were in pain. I could see that they suffered some sort of physical malady. And I did not want to be the Grinch telling them that no, that they should only be compensated for X, when I can see the pain when they would walk, and I would read the medical reports and all the other things. And so for me, after a while,
Gabe, in my trial experience, when I was actually a trial lawyer, it certainly taught me how to organize and marshal arguments in a way that would be persuasive under the rules of civil procedure and evidence. But when I moved to in-house, what I found from my trial experience was that you had to think through how was a contract going to be interpreted to multiple, I don't want to say stakeholders, but multiple audiences. So if you and I perhaps were reviewing a contract and either debating or arguing between us, that was one audience. If I had to go to court and argue to a judge in a judge-only trial, that was another audience. And then a jury, the ultimate trier of fact, could be yet another audience. So that I found the process of understanding how something would sound to multiple audiences also served me well as an in-house counsel. Did you have either of those experiences when you were in private practice trying cases?
Sure. I think for me, actually, I much preferred a jury trial than I did a trial by judge, or only because I felt that I have the ability to express myself better to a jury. Jury selection, I think, is key. Understanding your audience is key. Knowing what it is that the points of attachment are for them, what the ways that I can express myself, or the arguments that I can make, really depended on the composition of that jury. So we have to be very strategic in the way that we selected a jury. I love trial work. I'm not going to lie. That was the best part of it. And I think that's going back to my debate years, the ability to select a position on an argument and then fully research, come up with creative ways to interpret different things, and then being able to propose those things and to convince people of your viewpoint. I don't think that there's a better experience for me on the legal side than I had with trial. And to be honest with you, in the compliance field, when you're preparing documentation, one of the most important things is really understanding who your audience is going to be. And I think a lot of that does come from the trial work prep, from the debate prep that I've had in the past. Understanding who it is that you're going to speak to and understanding who's going to read these documents, it helps to make you a better compliance person, I believe at least, and helps to make you a better writer and a speaker. So I definitely loved my trial experience.
Gabe, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time for this episode, but I hope our listeners will join us for our next episode where we discuss what put the bug of compliance in your ear. It's one of the most unique stories I've heard and fascinating stories. If our listeners wanted to follow up with you on any of the topics we've raised in this podcast, Gabe, where can they go?
They can go to our website, www.k2integrity.com, or they can reach out to me via email, GHID as in David, ALGO at k2integrity.com. Those are probably the two easiest ways for them to reach out to the firm and to reach out to me personally.
Gabe, I look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thanks a lot, Tom.
Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox. Thank you again for listening to this episode of The Compliance Life. I hope you will join me again next week where I take up another episode with Gabe Hidalgo in The Compliance Life. The Compliance Life is a production of the Compliance Podcast Network. If you would like to be featured on The Compliance Life, please give me an email at tfox@tfoxlaw.com. Also, if you like this series, please give us a rating on iTunes. Any review and rating would definitely help get the word out about the latest addition to the Compliance Podcast Network. Thanks again.